record for this little bit, but please ask me questions. All right, so once you have opened up your copy of the Google Doc, it'll say your name in it. And then your job is really just to read this and annotate it. I'm going to do this with you so you can follow along. You can keep the same comments I do, or you can add more. You can also use color coding as you highlight if you identify various types of literary devices and you want to write those together. And our job is really, we're looking for the literary devices in the poem part of this. There's an introduction, and then there's a poem, and then there's just a couple of things for us to answer, right? So we're going to work through this together. Any questions? If you are not in this yet, send me a link, send me your email address in the chat here, and I can add you to it. You were given access already, but if you're having trouble, let me know. All right, I'm going to read Digital Muse for a Beat Poet. First off, I already have schema for this word muse, and I know a muse is something like artists use. It inspires an artist. It's a concept from like Greek mythology, I think. The muses were actually people, but people will talk about, oh, my muse, like that girl was my muse. I wrote all my songs about her. Do you have a muse, Izzy, for your music? I know you're a creative. All right, so he wrote this about 10 years ago. This is a long time, January 22nd, 2010. Days before Stephen P. Jobs, the chief executive of Apple, introduces his next big thing, the consensus holds it will be a sleek tablet computer. All right, and since this is 2010, my guess is they were talking about the launch of the iPad, right? Which now we're all used to having, but about 10 years ago probably didn't exist, right? I called up Gary Snyder, the Beat era poet who writes about the American wilderness. All right, I also schema, Beat era was a long time ago. This was like the 1960s. So this dude must be old. Now, Mr. Snyder might not have seemed the best person to ask to reflect on the milestones of the digital age. See, I was right, he's 79. He is 79, and that was 10 years ago. So if he's still alive, he's 89 now, oh my God. And lives in the Sierra foothills of Northern California. Okay, I also have schema for that because I'm from there. That's like way out in the country, like middle of nowhere style. But his world and that of the early personal computer makers like Mr. Jobs overlapped in both time and space. He has a nuanced understanding of computers. He is a devoted Macintosh user, though he said he wrote with whatever was at hand. And while everyone in Silicon Valley is on the edge of their seat waiting for Apple's introduction on Wednesday of its newest creation, Mr. Snyder is taking a wait-and-see attitude. So he's not all fiending for the technology, okay? I'm going to just put my understanding of that. He isn't excited about new tech. This is all just background now. I'm getting my head around what kind of poem this is going to be. Word of an Apple book replacement had not yet reached him in the California backcountry where he lives without electricity. Yeah, see, he lives in the sticks. He almost never uses a cell phone and has no use for Blackberries. He considers texting abhorrent. I love the word abhorrent. But Mr. Snyder said he liked his laptop. I like the storage space it has, he said, and I like the ability to have back files accessible to me wherever I go. In a poem, unpublished and reprinted below with Mr. Snyder's permission, he breathes life into his computer, something that many of us tend to do with the machines that increasingly consume our lives. Personal computers, Mr. Snyder said, feel like sentient beings. Next week, Mr. Jobs may be preparing to offer his most sentient Macintosh yet. All right, now's the poem. This is where I'm looking for my literary devices, hopefully remembering all that. And we'll look through. All right. Why I take good care of my Macintosh. Because it broods under its hood like a perched falcon. All right. I already see a simile. Do you see it? you guys recognize it as a simile? Oh, I can't see that way. I'm going to highlight it like that. Simile. Because it jumps like a skittish horse and sometimes throws me. There's another one. Jumps like a skittish horse and throws me. Oh, that kind of makes sense. Another one. Oh, still doing that wrong. Because it is pokey when cold. That's kind of making it like a personification, like a thing. I'm going to color code personification a different color, maybe green. Because plastic is a sad, strong material that is charming to rodents. Because it is flighty. Because my mind flies into it through my fingers. I love that line. My mind flies into it through my fingers. That's pretty awesome. That's just figurative language, though, I think, right? Because it's not an actual. Because it leaps forward and backward in an endless sniffer and searcher. Endless sniffer and searcher. Yeah, it's like making it into a creature, right? So it's like personifying it. Yeah. What's what? Yeah. Like it feels like, right? Like this is they're personifying it. They're taking this computer and making it into an animate, living thing because its keys click like hail on a boulder. Now, this is figurative language because it's like that's the sound, right? So that's like making you think. This is sensory language, I guess we could call it. It appeals to sense of hearing. He wants you to hear that, right? A keys click like hail on a boulder. And it winks when it goes out. Again, I got personification. It's all over this poem. There's tons of personification. Whoops, I keep doing the wrong thing. Winks when it goes out. And puts word heaps in hordes for me. Dozens of pockets of gold under boulders in stream beds. Identical seed pods strong on a vine or in its store of bins and bolts. That one's so dense. I'm thinking about it a lot. It puts word heaps in hordes for me. I like the language of that. But that's again, it's like taking the words and making them into like objects. And dozens of pockets of gold. This is a metaphor because this is comparing, but without using like or as. So this is a metaphor where we compare, not using like or as. Give that a different color. So you see what I'm doing here? I'm just analyzing it, and there aren't really right answers necessarily. Some, figurative language can be tricky. As there's a like or an as, it's a simile. If it's comparing it to a person, it's a personification. If it's comparing two things without like or as, it's a metaphor. But you can also just mention it's sensory or it's figurative. It's like it's definitely using language differently. And I lose them and find them. Because whole worlds of writing can be boldly laid out and then highlighted and vanish in a flash at delete. So it teaches the impermanence and pain. And because my computer and me are both brief in this world, it's all schema, both foolish, and we have earthly fates. All right, so he's comparing, right? Again, this is personification because he's comparing computer has life, which it does sort of metaphorically, but it doesn't breathe like you and I, right? There's no heartbeat to it. But I've gone through at least 10 computers in my lifetime, so they are brief in this world, and they do have earthly fates. because I have let it move in with me right inside the tent. Okay, this line is great. And I'm going to ask you to analyze this a little later, so I'll go over it now. Again, this is personification, right? Because this is taking that and making it into a person. It is a person that is moving in with you, this computer. It's like you have a relationship with it, right? And I love that it says in a tent, because tents are not permanent. Tents are impermanent. I'm your English teacher, can't spell. Get Grammarly, it's really helpful. This little add-on, Open Grammarly, I put it on my Google extension. Oh, it's the best. Better than regular spell check. And it goes with me out every morning. We fill up our baskets, get back home, feel rich, relax. I throw it in a scrap and it hums. All right, so again, it's like this is still extending that personification, like that me and this computer, and he has them living like in a tent and gathering up their baskets every day. It's like going to that like basic living where I'm just going out to get my food every day. So he's like, more personification here. All right, I feel rich, relax, I throw it in a scrap and it hums. All right, I would suggest reading this poem a couple more times, but we're gonna let you have time to do this on your own. But let me go over what we do at the end. So we're gonna think about the poem's line, and because my computer and me are both brief in this world, both foolish and have earthly fates, I want you to compare this computer to a person, right? A computer is like a person's life. In what way is a computer like a person? Computer's life like a person's life. I guess I could put person here, but that's probably better. See, I'm always revising. I want you to always be revising too. A computer is like a person. How? Because of what reason? And then a computer is like a person, but what is also true. And a computer is like a person, so. And a so, this is where we're getting to cause and effect. You want to add something here that's the, I'll put a note to this, effect, cause, like not just basics, but like what's the cause and what's the effect. If a computer is like a person, then what is true? And then I want you to go back to this first 8 lines of the poem that all say because, any of these lines, and choose one of them. Copy it here, and then write your response. This is an example of me doing the response to that. I had it move right inside like a tent. So I went over this verbally. There is more of my analysis written. I want you to do the same thing here. When you finish that, you should be able to just press up here to the button that says submit on your copy, and it should submit if Google Classroom works the way that I was told it does. And then we'll see whether you think it's easier or not. All right, so now's the time you ask me questions. You get to work on your Google Classroom stuff if you want. And you add some of your own annotations, your own thinking, and especially the end. Then you press submit. And as for